All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be getting a guest on the phone here real quick, and what's going to happen here is we're going to talk about what's going on in New Zealand, because I got news for you folks. We got big problems over there. New Zealand is under attack, folks. It's being sprayed with chemicals, and they're getting chemicals dumped on them over there, folks. So I just want to make sure. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. I'm going to try to get my guest on here. It's going to be just a moment. Looks like there's a little bit of interference with the lighting here. Okay. It's a little better. All right. Let's see. I'm going to go get this person on, folks. I want you to stay with me here. We're going to talk about New Zealand tonight, folks. Let me see if I can just bear with me, okay? It's going to take a minute to make this phone call. You folks still with me here? All right, we're trying to get the guest on here. We're having a little trouble. And we're going to talk about New Zealand. Let me see what I got to do here. Just a moment, folks. Just a sec, folks. All right, let's see if we can get this guest on, ladies and gentlemen. See if this is going through.
Hello.
Okay, hi, we're live on the air. Can you hear me? This is the Fullerton Informer. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Okay. So we're on the air right now. I don't know if you want to give us your name or you want to remain anonymous, but if you'd like to tell the audience who you are, you can. If you wish to remain anonymous, I will respect that.
Okay, I think we'll just stick to a first name basis.
Okay.
My name's Fiona, and I'm 42 and I've lived in New Zealand my whole life, mainly in the Christchurch area.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, can everybody hear Fiona okay? The audio, how's the audio coming in? You just look at the comments here. They're saying it's a little muffled. Let me bring it a little closer here and do it a little.
Sorry?
Let me do a little adjustment. Fiona, can you go ahead and speak up? Go ahead and talk real quick.
Kira from New Zealand.
Go ahead. Fiona?
Kira from New Zealand. Yes.
All right, go ahead. So anywhere you want to begin, Fiona, because, you know, I was looking over your email and you've been around the block in New Zealand, and tell the audience what the heck is going on in New Zealand right now.
Oh, it's just atrocious. It is absolutely atrocious, Mr. Embriano. This is one of the most beautiful countries in the world, and we have got dying animals everywhere in our beautiful native bush. And in the most cruel way, in the absolute most cruel way, 1080 poison has been used in New Zealand since the 1950s. We've been protesting this the whole time. I mean, the protests got quite large in the 1980s. I was a child of the 80s, and I can quite clearly remember it. New Zealand's a protest nation. If there's something we don't like or don't agree with, we get out in numbers and we do something about it. And quite generally, the government heeds us. This 1080, nearly every person in the country has strong feelings on this, and quite a lot of New Zealanders are active in voicing their concerns about 1080. They protest, they picket, they try to block deliveries of 1080, they try to stop aerial drops of 1080. People have contacted local councils, they've contacted the government, different ministries in the government, and all to no avail. To no avail. And it just seems strange that, you know, a handful of people can go and protest something and the government listens to them. The whole country protests this, and it just falls on deaf ears. It's gotten to the point where there's actual violence about this now.
Can you tell the audience why they're doing this? Why do they want to kill all the animals in New Zealand? Because that's what they're trying to do. Is that not what they're trying to do?
Well, there's this whole pest-free by 2050 thing. Now, I had no idea why the government is choosing to use poison in our national forests, in our national parks. A good chunk of our population, you know, I would say quite a high chunk of our population in relation to the rest of the world, you know, we're hunters and fishers. It's quite common. It's very common for whole families to spend, you know, a week in the bush. It's very common for men to go out on the weekends with the children and hunt wild boar, hunt deer, and fill up all their family of whānau neighbours' freezers with the meat. This is how a lot of New Zealanders live. And there have been numerous groups of hunters and trappers that have volunteered to go and live in the bush and hunt and trap these possums. You know, apparently the possums are the worst thing ever for our birds. There's a viable fur trade just waiting to be grabbed there. These people are chomping at the bit to get in there, start trapping possums, selling the fur, selling the meat, and the government just goes in and drops the 1080 everywhere, and then the hunters can't go in there because it's too dangerous. They can't eat anything that they've trapped or killed. They can't drink the water out of the streams. There's 1080 pellets all through it. So it's not even safe for the hunters and trappers to go in there and eradicate these pests by themselves and make a profit from it.
So you're saying that
with the poison.
Fiona, what you're saying that people eat the possums. People in New Zealand, because
possum pies are lovely.
Ladies and gentlemen, New Zealand is a beautiful place, and there are a lot of animals to eat in New Zealand, and there's a lot of food to eat in New Zealand. And what Fiona is telling us is the government, in the name of eradicating what they consider invasive pests, has taken it upon themselves to poison the rivers, the streams, and all of the animals so that people can't go out and hunt anything and eat anything. Are you telling me that even like the deer and animals like that are eating this stuff, these pellets that they're dropping, and these animals are not safe to eat as well?
Mr. Embriano, did you watch that short documentary I sent to you?
I certainly did. And what I want to do is try to...
did you see those poor deer?
Yep. I want you to explain...
Just let your audience know, what's happening to these animals. Hunters and trackers are going in, and conservationists, just ordinary people that are concerned about the bush, are going in after these 1080 drops and getting just disturbing and disgusting and atrocious footage of these poor animals, and there's evidence everywhere of how much they have suffered. I mean, just in that documentary there, one stag was it was so sick and so much anguish that it gored its own stomach with its antlers to try and get rid of what's inside of it. Their rear ends are exploding, their eyes are bulging out and exploding. These animals have gone through a horrific death, absolutely horrific. It can take days for this to kill them, depending on how much they've eaten. And then their carcasses are in the stream. I mean, when you're sick, you try to drink water, but a lot of them go to the water and then they die in the streams and in the rivers, which contaminates the water even more. And then the eels eat the carcasses. The eel is a very staple and traditional diet of Maori. It's it's a traditional thing to do, and it's quite a New Zealand thing to do. A lot of people go eeling, and these eels are eating poisoned carcasses. We've got trout turning up positive for 1080 poison at the moment. They're indiscriminate where they drop. They'll do a whole block, like 30,000 hectares, with 40,000 kgs of this stuff, and just spread it everywhere. They avoid, by 20 to 50 metres, they avoid large lakes. But all the streams, the tributaries, the rivers that flow into these lakes are not avoided at all. When you look at the flight pattern of these drops, they're just in straight lines. They don't avoid any streams or rivers whatsoever, just bam, straight through them.
So the entire national forest area is under attack by 1080. And that is a deadly pesticide Absolutely. That is killing these animals. And it is an indiscriminate killer. Is that correct?
Yes, it's not a targeted poison at all. It kills everything, everything that breathes.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't understand what Fiona's talking about, she lives in the Christchurch area of New Zealand, and the government, the Department of Conservation, has taken it upon itself to rid the nation of New Zealand of what they consider invasive species. So they're dumping these green pellets out of helicopters by the barrel loads, and it's a compound called sodium fluoroacetate. Okay, and basically this is a deadly poison that is highly toxic to any oxygen-breathing animal or organism, and it is a gruesome way to die.
Cycle.
Go ahead, Fiona, please.
Oh, sorry, when you're saying about oxygen there, it disrupts the Krebs cycle. It's indiscriminate. Anything that breathes, it's going to kill.
It's really, I mean, the Krebs cycle is the basis of the metabolic activity of everything that lives on oxygen. So everything that we consume, like insects or fish, people eat bugs, people eat fish, people eat animals. And this stuff is all being attacked by this stuff. And it even can be lethal in humans, and it builds up in people. And it's in the food supply. Fiona, how many years have they been dumping this stuff on New Zealand? How long has this been going on?
It's been since the 1950s, but it's been going up in earnest since the 1980s. And just recently, or about to be done, they're extending resource consent for another 35 years to use 1080. I think it was the WIKIJOE District Council that is extending this for 35 years.
are you seeing people getting sick from 1080 ingestion from eating animals in the water? I mean, are you starting to see the effects of this stuff on people?
Well, it's funny you should say that. I was watching your broadcast about the crisis in New Zealand when you were talking to another gentleman from Christchurch, and he brought up the subject of the Indian family up in the North Island. Now, this was quite a big thing, and they tried to keep it quite hush, but the family had come out, and with the help of TV Wild, that's a YouTube sort of truth channel here, and it was on the 10th of November 2017. Now, 3 family members, a wife, a husband, and a grandma, they ate wild boar that was, sourced from the wild. The children had gone to bed earlier, so it was just the wife, the husband, and the grandmother that ate this wild boar. And by 2 a.m., the wife started vomiting, and by 3 or 4 a.m., all 3 of them were vomiting. They couldn't walk, they were crawling, their vision was blurred, they couldn't focus, their brains were scrambled, they were saying random words, they were barely conscious, describing themselves as everything spinning. The ambulance took them to a medical facility in Tokoroa about 5 a.m. and then they were transferred to, I think it was Hamilton Hospital in Waikato after that. Now, when they arrived there at Waikato Hospital, the wife, she had 2 tonic-clonic seizures on arrival and was taken immediately to ICU. The husband and grandma were experiencing progressive paralysis from top to bottom. They were having muscle spasms. They were thrashing around like unbelievably. They had to be restrained. 3 or 4 nurses had to help, hold them down. They were agitated and angry and confused. They were unconscious, but the eyes were open, bulging and bloodshot. Now, the grandma was lying there, and her legs were doing 180-degree spasms. Her legs were flying back over her head. So about 12 hours after they got sick, they were administered an antitoxin for botulism, and the progressive paralysis stopped pretty much immediately. But within a couple of days, the doctors there knew that it wasn't botulism, but they didn't tell the family that until 2 weeks later, that they tested negative for botulism. They sent samples to the CDC over there in America, which came back negative for botulism. And family representatives, this is an Indian family, and they're obviously not completely savvy with the New Zealand bush or whatever, because if a New Zealander went into the forest and there was no birdsong, they'd get the hell out, because we all know 1080. But obviously they didn't know, and they've eaten this wild boar. But when it was mentioned to the family about 1080, they asked the doctors, the family representative asked the doctors, could this be 1080? And the medical professional he spoke to said, no, you would have to eat it like a bowl of cereal for this to happen. It's just ridiculous. And their neighbour, when the District Health Board's Minister of Health were investigating and coming through their house, the neighbour was there, and the neighbour witnessed them taking samples for all the food in the house, including the wild boar. And to this day, as far as I know of, the family have requested the results of those tests and have never got them. What TV Wild requested the District Health Board tests results for pesticides from the family. They were declined, and then they got consent from the family to request it, and it was declined. The husband of the family, he requested his medical files to see what these, the tests were about, and they said that he would have to wait 20 working days, and yet a few days later they released to the media that it was negative for botulism, and yet they didn't release it to him. So the media were told the results before the family were. It was absolutely true. They tested for 1080 18 days after this family was hospitalised, and it came back negative.
They're a bunch of liars.
Brianna, everybody in this country knows
Everybody
that family
knows.
was poisoned by 1080.
So now you Fiona, you mentioned that there's now people are starting to get violent over there, huh? I mean, people are starting to really get tired of this. Is that right? You're saying that people are starting to get violent?
Yes, it is coming to that on some occasions. Yes, the staff that have been tasked with applying this poison everywhere, they're quite in danger because the locals, the farmers, activists, local iwi, which is local tribes, all get involved and try and stop these drops. And the Department of Conservation has employed thugs to try and keep these people out. Not prosecute, not police. Police are usually on site wherever there's a protest, but Department of Conservation has hired personal security, which are basically just thugs trying to keep these concerned locals out of that area. And things are starting to turn violent. And just to reiterate that, the way things are coming here, I mean, we get quite upset when something happens to one of our countrymen, you know. But just recently, in the last couple of weeks, a helicopter crashed and the pilot died. And it was a 1080 poison drop. And when people heard about it, the most word that I heard regarding that was karma. You know,
so Fiona,
that's really sad.
Fiona,
it's really sad that it's gotten to that.
They're using helicopters. And how many pounds at a time are they dumping out of these helicopters?
Around between 30 and 40,000 kilograms. I'm not sure what that is.
Okay, folks, 30 to 40,000 kilos of 1080 pellets, which is basically
1,000 kilos at a time.
30,000 kilograms at a time are being dumped out of these helicopters. And this stuff is killing animals. It's killing birds. It's killing the insect life. Is it now starting to like affect the trees? I mean, I noticed you mentioned that you said a lot of things are dying down there. Are we seeing some issues with vegetation and trees now?
Well, it's funny you should mention that. We've got an ancient kauri forest in North Island. A beautiful, beautiful tree. And there's what's called swamp kauri. These trees are over 5,000 years old, up to 50,000 years old, the ones being found in the swamp that have been preserved in peat. Now, we've got this massive tree called Tane Mahuta, and it's like 148 metres high. It's massive. It's 50 metres wide. Now, this forest, there was a drought in 2013, and they diverted tens of thousands of litres of water from nearby tributaries to water this kauri forest. And then a couple of years later, we start hearing about kauri dieback. And they're getting people to wash their feet and wash their dogs' feet through the national parks and things like that to try and stop the spread of this kauri dieback. So I'm wondering if it had something to do with the fact that the streams were diverted to water those forests and the streams and tributaries that were used. I mean, 1080 drops were right above them.
Wow. Fiona, why do you think they're doing it?
I can't be certain on that, but
why? What do you think their motivation is for poisoning? What are they up to? What do you think their motivation is?
Well, this you have to understand that the company that brings this poison into the country, it's a company called Animal Control Products Limited. That is owned by the New Zealand government. It is owned by the New Zealand government. It imports, manufactures and distributes 1080. And it's jointly owned with the ownership thing. It it says it is jointly owned 50% each to the Minister of Finance and the Minister for Primary Industries.
Now,
and it's all the same people.
Fiona, I'm of the opinion that I think it's a depopulation agenda. I think it's a very slow but methodical plan to depopulate and to get people in New Zealand in a position to where they won't have any food if things go wrong. Because you can't go out and hunt if they get all these animals killed off, and if they got all these animals poisoned, and you're in the city with no electricity and nothing to eat, and there's millions of people, and the forest is pretty much worthless because it's all got a bunch of poison in it. I mean, isn't that kind of like something that has occurred to you, that this could possibly be what they're up to?
Well, when I was listening to your last cast about New Zealand, and you said about, the Indigenous population, now it occurs to me that the majority of these drops, where it's most frequently dropped, are actually in the areas where the Freemasons, when they first came here, had the most trouble with the Maori population, the New Zealand Wars. It just happens to be in the same areas that this is being targeted.
Okay, can you repeat?
I don't know if that's a
Can you repeat what you just said, please? That's very important.
The central North Island, especially the Waikato region, that's where it's been targeted the most, from what I can gather. Now, that's also the region where the most skirmishes were, where the most combat was in the New Zealand Wars between 1806 and 1866.
So it could very well be a type of genocide.
It could well be. Our nation, if all the power went out, if all the internet went out, if everything went down, the majority of New Zealanders would be fine. We know how to survive. We've been brought up in the bush. We've been brought up with these things. We all know our uncle or our cousin or something like that, or, as a farmer or a trapper or a hunter. We know how to survive. So I don't think they could get to us by knocking out electricity and things like that, like they could with other nations, because we'd be fine. But if you poison our rivers and our lakes and our forests, then we can't survive.
So what's going on over there, you feel could have a Masonic Masonic component to it?
This country was founded by Freemasons. Our first governor here, Governor George Grey, he was a Freemason. First prime ministers, the bank. I've got a wee list here for you. When ancient Freemasons. There we go. Okay, so first, we were discovered by Captain James Cook. He was a Freemason. And we've got Sir George Grey. He was a Freemason. And he was the governor that was responsible for the New Zealand Wars and also for tricking the Maori into signing the Treaty of Waitangi in 1840. Then we've got Isaac Watt, a Freemason who spoke fluent Te Reo Maori. He got Ngāi Tahu tribe to sell 30 million acres of Te Waipounamu, the South Island of New Zealand. It was pretty much the entire South Island. He was a Freemason. The Bank of New Zealand was founded in 1861 by Frederick Whittaker. He was a Freemason. He was the first provincial Grand Master of the North Island, New Zealand. The first three newspapers that were founded here, the New Zealand Herald, the Taranaki Herald, and the Wellington Independent. The New Zealand Herald was founded by William Chisholm Wilson. He was a Freemason. He was the founder of the first Freemasonic Lodge here in New Zealand, the Ara Lodge. The Taranaki Herald was founded by Garland William Wynne. He was a Freemason. Wellington Independent, founded by Thomas Wilmore, a Freemason. The first editor of that was Isaac Earl Featherston, who's the superintendent of Wellington, Freemason. Well, Prime Minister, Sydney Holland, 1949 to 1957. Freemason, Keith Holyoake, Prime Minister, Freemason. But sort of after that time frame, they kept it quite quiet. Our beehive, our Parliament building, the beehive, that was commissioned by a Freemason, and the architect was a Freemason, and the beehive is a Freemasonic symbol. Our national anthem was written by Thomas Bacon. He was a Freemason.
Okay, Fiona, I want to ask you a question, because you made a mention of something in your email, and you've got a lot of information, and believe me, we got a lot of time to talk tonight. Unless you have to go somewhere, we can keep going. So, but we know that there's some really dark stuff going on down there. Okay. You mentioned that there are planes that go to Antarctica, that fly out of there, and you said they don't have any windows on them. Do you seem to think that there's some significance to that?
Well, I've been a truther for a while now, and whenever anything's mentioned about Antarctica, I've heard a few truthers mention and be quite bothered by the fact that there's no windows on the Antarctic plane. I can attest to that. I've seen the Antarctic plane quite a few times. I've lived directly underneath the flight path of Christchurch Airport or beside it quite a few times over the years. And it's quite unsettling, actually, to see such a massive, massive aeroplane like that with no windows on it whatsoever. None.
Now, what does that airplane...
But other than that, no.
Fiona, what does that airplane do? Is that a commercial airliner that takes people to Antarctica?
There is no commercial airline as such that does that. You have to go through a rigorous testing, application process before you're even allowed to try and book a flight there. You have to fill out numerous forms, say what you're doing, why you're going, what you want to do, and be really specific about it. And then they'll most probably turn you down anyway.
Why do you think?
Why
do you think they're so secretive about Antarctica, Fiona?
Well, there's a lot of theories about that. A lot. I know of quite a few theories. Personally, I'm of the belief that they don't want people to find into the firmament. That's just my personal belief.
Okay, I need you to repeat what you just said.
My personal belief is that access to Antarctica is highly restricted because they don't want you to find the firmament.
Ladies and gentlemen, what this woman has just stated is absolute truth, okay? And the Bible talks about the firmament, and the Bible talks about the solid structure that is above the earth, and this solid structure that is above the earth comes down at the ice walls at the ends of the earth, folks. And New Zealand is a landmass that happens to be one of the closest points to hop a plane to get to the ice ring. And Fiona has made some incredibly relevant points about the fact that that country has been owned lock, stock, and barrel by Masons, Freemasons, since its inception, its media, its government. And now she's made an incredible observation. She lives near the flight path of the Christchurch Airport, and she sees the Antarctic plane take off, and it has no windows on it. And is this like a 747 aircraft, Fiona?
I'm not terribly savvy with the aircraft.
Is it a really big airplane? It's a big jet?
One of the largest airplanes I've seen.
Okay.
Sorry?
Go ahead. Please continue.
I don't know too much about aircraft, but it's one of the largest aircraft I've ever seen. It's quite imposing, and it's really unsettling when you look at it. It just looks so odd with no windows whatsoever.
You know, Fiona, I've been studying for quite some time this issue of the shape of the Earth, the firmament, and the lies of NASA. And New Zealand is of incredible significance because of its location and its ability to be protected from all these other land masses, as well as its proximity to the ice ring. And, you know, it doesn't surprise me that people are, I believe, being selectively killed off down there slowly, and their food supply is under attack. Because you're right, people there, people in New Zealand are tough and they're resourceful. And the problem is even without electricity, there's still plenty of water and there's still plenty of fruits and vegetables and animals to survive on, and plenty of open space. But what's under attack right now is the quality of the water and the quality and the abundance of the animals. And that is, I believe, something that we need to be very concerned with. And at the same time, all of these really high level and extremely wealthy people are actually going down to New Zealand and buying up enormous properties and building doomsday bunkers on that continent. So, you know, I find this all really, really suspicious that it's a big old Masonic party, and they take trips to the ice wall with planes that have no windows, and then they're dumping 50,000 kilograms of sodium fluoroacetate pellets out of the helicopters every day, where people seem to not be too happy about things. This is really, really crazy. Are people in New Zealand allowed to own firearms, Fiona?
It's quite strict. Generally, it's only really farmers and licensed hunters, things like that have firearms. There is an illegal trade here, but it's not huge.
What kind of military presence is in your country to keep the people under control? Do you see a military presence on the streets, or what is keeping people from fighting back all the way? Are there armed people everywhere that are working for the government, or what's going on?
No, there's nothing like that. Nothing like that at all. You hardly ever see military. The only time you really see military is if during an exercise or moving, you'll see, you know, like a convoy of their vehicles going through town, you know, when they're going from place to place. Just on the outskirts of Christchurch is a place called Burnham Military Camp. And I have to say, that is a complete embarrassment. For a military base, it is just, it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The security there is so lax. I used to live by there and go past to go to the shop all the time. And I've identified at least 3 areas where I reckon I can just slip on the fence. Not a problem. It's ridiculous. The last time the army was employed in numbers is after the Christchurch earthquakes. You know, we had military on the road.
I wanted to talk to you about those earthquakes because it certainly seems like that place is rocking and rolling a lot. What do you think is going on with those earthquakes? Do you think those are naturally occurring, or do you think something else is going on there?
Well, there is a major fault line that runs right through the centre of the South Island. So we're all quite aware of the possibility of that. I can remember when I was a child feeling one, maybe two, just tiny little rumbles. But in 2011, that was quite, sorry, I still get a bit emotional about it. That was horrific. It was horrendous. And I think we had about 17,000 rumbles. It was terrible. Oh, I said to you in my email, what I've always been quite concerned about Christchurch, you know, being a departure area for Antarctica. And what concerns me more is Scott Base. Scott Base is an American military base, and it's directly adjacent. It's attached to Christchurch International Airport, and that's where the Antarctic plane actually leaves from, Scott Base. That's in Christchurch. When those earthquakes happened, the central city was devastated. The eastern suburbs were devastated. The airport area is opposite to that area, more western. The area around the airport and surrounding areas, it was largely untouched. The roads were fine, everything was pretty much fine over there. And yet, when the rebuild started, they immediately started from the airport area out. The whole infrastructure around Christchurch International Airport has been upgraded and done very, very quickly. And yet the central city and the eastern suburbs just left rot. It's 7 years later, it still looks like a bomb site. It's terrible. And yet all the areas around the airport, done quickly. Which just happens to be near Scott Base.
Scott Base. Okay, so that's an American Air Force installation, and that's where the Antarctic flights take off out of. Is that what you're saying, Fiona?
Yes.
You know, I wonder what, I wonder what these people do when they go to Antarctica and they get to the firmament. I wonder if they'll ever realize that there's no way out of there unless they go through Jesus Christ when they die. I really wonder about all these Masonic and Luciferian and Illuminati people that are dumping this stuff out of helicopters on a bunch of innocent people who are just trying to feed their families and go to work and go hunting and put meat on the table. I wonder what these people do when they take off in that plane with no windows. And I wonder who else is on those planes. I really do. They've obviously made a point to make sure that the flights to Antarctica continue uninterrupted and that infrastructure is maintained at all costs while everybody else can go piss up a rope, so to speak. So you're saying 7 years later, the outlying areas are just rubble still. Is that correct?
Pretty much.
How is the economic situation in New Zealand right now for the average person, Fiona?
Things have been getting harder and harder for the average person. The rich are getting richer and richer. We had a prime minister named John Key, and he was a very savvy businessman. That's how he got to where he was. He was an excellent businessman, actually. And through the financial crisis that the world was feeling, we remained pretty much intact due to his skill. I'm not saying he was a good prime minister. He ran the country like a business, not like a nation of people. But he kept our economy pretty much intact. But now what we're seeing is through a huge spike in house prices, people are homeless, Mr. Imbriano, in New Zealand. They're homeless. They're sleeping in cars. They're sleeping in vans. They are sleeping in people's garages. Whole families of 6 in a garage. Because there's no houses, and the ones that there are being bought up by overseas buyers, particularly Chinese, John Key's good mates, and the average New Zealander can't afford to buy a house, and a lot of us can't even afford to rent a house. And so overseas buyers are coming in and buying huge chunks of our land, putting their doomsday properties on it, your bunkers. We have got so many celebrities that own, American celebrities actually, that own a good chunk of our country and some of the most beautiful parts of our country.
Now, Fiona, are they dumping 1080? Are they dumping 1080 on those people's properties?
I highly doubt that. I highly doubt it. Where the drops are mainly been taking place through our national parks, a good percentage of our country are actually national parks. They're all pretty much protected. You can have permits to go in and hunt and things like that. There's a phenomenal amount of bushwalks, treks, treks that are attainable by the average person, not a problem. Sometimes you have to go through farmers' properties, but that's already sorted out. Farmers freely give public access to the national parks. There's all the poor farmers that are bordering the national parks. And it's not just farmland that borders the national parks. You could be in a city or a town and past the person's back fence, there's native bush. And that's where this 1080 is being dropped, right behind people's backyards, right on the edge of farms. Farm animals are being found, farmers' stock are coming back dying in the most horrific way. Their dogs, their cattle, their sheep, the deer. Wild animals are coming out of the forest to come and die on their land. It's horrific.
Fiona,
horrific.
The animals...
And these people don't get told.
Fiona, the animals that... Tell me about the history of New Zealand. Isn't New Zealand a continent that had very little animal life on it at one point in its native state? Isn't that what the country was like at one point?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that.
Was New Zealand almost animal free in its early days? I mean, were there really no animals to speak of in New Zealand at one time?
Oh yes, there was prolific bird life, fish life. There were moa. There was a large bird, large flightless bird, moa, and that's now extinct. That was hunted to death for meat. It was sustainable, completely and utterly sustainable.
But were there animals? Were there animals like deer or elk or cows or possums or rats a couple thousand years ago in New Zealand? I don't know too much history of
No.
So what you had was an island landmass that was basically just inhabited by birds and insects. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got quite a few flightless birds. We've got very friendly birds. Birds aren't very afraid in this country. They have no natural predators here to speak of, unless you ask Department of Conservation, it'll say possums. But they're really friendly. A lot of them are flightless. They'll interact with people. They'll come and sit on your shoulder. They'll follow you around the bush. Little fantails follow you around and come right up to your face and sit on you. It's when you walk through the bush that hasn't been hit by 1080, it's beautiful. It's so pleasant. You feel like you're in the Garden of Eden. The birds come and talk to you. The fish come up to the edge. It's lovely, absolutely lovely. And then you go over the top of the mountain range, come at the other side, and there's dead animals everywhere with their guts blowing out and their eyes blowing out.
I mean, isn't it
flying in rivers with the eels eating them?
Wouldn't it have made sense to let people just hunt these things? I mean, possums are easy to trap. I mean, they're the easiest animals to trap in the world. I mean, why is it that they're doing such a...
It's so quick and easy. So quick and easy. I'll give you a little example. There was, at a recent protest, where locals and farmers in iwi were trying to stop a 1080 drop. The men were saying to the people in charge of doing this, look, all of us here and all of our mates, we are happy. We are more than happy to go in that national park. We'll stay there for months. We don't care. We'll go and we'll hunt and we'll trap. We've got a market for possum fur. It's awesome. You can blend it with merino and then knit it. It's a lovely, lovely fibre. And the meat's not too bad either. It's a wee bit fatty, but, you know, the meat's highly palatable. Now, during that protest, one of the men said to the coordinators of the drop, my mate got a contract with a Japanese company to source 190 tonnes of possum meat, right? And as soon as the Japanese found out about 1080, they pulled out. Now, that was just one contract for 190 tonnes of possum meat. Just one contract, but it was gone as soon as they heard about 1080. There are so many people in this country that would be more than happy to go and make a living in the bush.
Yeah, this is definitely,
do it. Fiona, some kids get their pocket money.
This is an agenda. There's definitely an agenda going on here, because you're right. I mean, you know, as a matter of fact, you could actually have areas that you could sustainably raise these animals and cordon them off from other areas. The climate there is conducive to, you know, there's no reason why these animals could not have been trapped and hunted and exported and been a boom to the economy, put people to work. But instead, they're poisoning the natives and they're selling off all the land to the highest bidders and outpricing people that live there and putting them on the streets. And it's really, and then we've got all these high level people coming down there and buying up these huge lots of land and building these doomsday bunkers. And then they get on the airplane and go see the ice ring and the firmament. You know, I mean, it's just like, I wonder what is the, you know, I'm also seeing a lot of really satanic stuff going on in the media down there. I got wind of this commercial where Jesus was on the cross and they were making a joke about Jesus becoming an organ donor, and the guy hands his phone to Jesus and he touches it and becomes an organ donor while he's dying on the cross. And then there was another commercial where they said that the devil doesn't want your soul, he just wants your blood. I mean, is New Zealand becoming a satanic country?
Most people are just good, salt of the earth people here. The vast majority of us, we're just salt of the earth. We love our country. We like hunting and fishing. We like going to the river. We spend time with our families. We look after our parks. You know, it's just exasperating. There are people here, there's a lot of people here that want to go and do the hunting and trapping. They want to bring back, they want to re-establish the fur trade. And they can't go in there, Mr. Embriano. It's not safe for them to go in there. They can't go and pitch a tent in the middle of the bush. They've got nothing to drink or eat there. They can't drink the water out of the rivers because they know damn well, oh, here's a 1080 pellet.
You know, I cannot even imagine that. I cannot even imagine, because
Pardon?
I cannot even imagine what that would be like to go into a beautiful place like that where you can't drink the water and you can't eat the animals. But it's happening. And it's been going for decades and there's no end in sight. And the people are finally starting to, are people getting to the tipping point to where they're going to revolt? I mean, or are people just accepting this? I mean, what is going on?
Well, it's been quite hushed. Like when farmers lose stock or things like that, they're compensated by the district council, right? They put in a claim and say that they've lost X amount of stock, and the district council will give them a rebate. Now, a lot of people, when they go to get their compensation, the district council will actually ask them to put it down as things like track maintenance or loss of stock feed, not 1080 poisoned cattle, track maintenance, stock feed, things like that. And they make sign disclosure agreements. Now, in the rural areas, people are quite spread out and pretty much stick to their own farms, except for, gatherings and things like that. Now, if you've signed a disclosure statement, then you're not going to be talking about it. These people have been compensated for 1080 poisoned stock, and it's been going through the books as, for example, like track maintenance and loss of stock feed. This is how it's all been covered up for the longest time. But nowadays, with the internet and things like that, and people are much more savvy about these things, people are realising, hang on, this has been going on. We've actually known about this, but nobody's done anything.
So the average person,
That's how they've gotten away with it.
So the farmers are getting paid off. What is the average person? Are they struggling just to pay their bills so they don't end up on the streets? Is it that bad to where they don't have time or the resources to fight this?
There are quite a few dedicated people that protest this all the time. But just a couple of months ago, one of the last protests, one of the most recent protests, was in, where are we? Right, on the 7th of September, hundreds of people, thousands across the country. There were protests all over the country, and hundreds of people marched across the country to Wellington, our capital, where Parliament is. Marched all over there, went to Parliament on the 7th of September. They had symbolic carrots. They were throwing carrots everywhere because it's one of the ways that the Department of Conservation delivers this poison. And bags of dead birds, including caribou, which Doc is claiming it doesn't affect. And then they try coming back and saying that the birds were bludgeoned to death. No, they weren't. It was 1080 poison. People protest this all the time. All the time. People get arrested for trying to investigate this. In Whitianga, I forget the man's name, I think it was Graham something, think of this, smelt 1080 in the central city. And I said, I can smell 1080 in here. See this camera and everything, and went to go and investigate it, because keeping 1080 in a populated area, storing it there, and he got arrested. He got arrested trying to investigate this.
Wow.
Things like that. It's very common. You can't go, just in Christchurch here, you can't go from one side of Christchurch to the other, no matter what direction, without coming across at least one, probably two or three, ban 1080 signs. There's a sign coming into Christchurch, there's a sign going out of Christchurch, there's signs up all over Christchurch, and we're not actually targeted. This area isn't targeted as much. But people on the east coast of the South Island, Christchurch area, a lot of families, a lot of people spend a lot of time on the coast, on the west coast. Now, this is an area that is regularly targeted, the 1080. And the west coast of New Zealand is one of the most beautiful places on earth. It is absolutely beautiful. And they're dropping 1080 all over it all the time. I think it was actually the Westland District Council. I'm not entirely sure. I forgot which district council it was. But resource consent was applied for a 1080 drop. But the locals got together and went to the district council and said, hell no. And so the council went back to Doc and said, look, no, we can't do this. The locals are saying no. They tried again, and the locals said no. And so the district council refused the resource consent. The Doc, Department of Conservation, overrode them and did it anyway.
Well,
did it anyway.
I'm convinced that this is a depopulation agenda, and I'm convinced that New Zealand is a hub for the people that are really, really high up in the world government to get on that plane and go to that ice ring. And I don't know what in the world goes on on Antarctica, but I know stuff does go on Antarctica, and I know Antarctica. The ice ring goes all around the circumference of the face of the Earth, ladies and gentlemen, and I could only imagine what it's like to come right up to the firmament, folks. I mean, that must be just incredible. And by the way, Fiona, how are the stars at night down there? How do they look? When you go outside at night, can you see the sky? Is it beautiful? Or is there a lot of street lights? I mean, how is the stargazing in New Zealand right now?
Well, I've been a bit of a stargazer pretty much my whole life. I've pretty much lived outside my whole life. I'm a horticulturalist. And on a clear night, it's beautiful. It's amazing. It looks absolutely lovely. But in the last, I'd say, 5-6 years, the chemtrailing has been ramping up. You can hardly go a day without seeing a chemtrail in the sky. So on the days where there's been heavy chemtrailing, no, you can't see very much at all at night.
So they're spraying in New Zealand too, huh? They spray everywhere now.
Oh, look, I cried. I cried the first day I realised, oh my God, that's a chemtrail above the sky in New Zealand. I honestly thought we were immune from that sort of carry on. And then I realised, oh, chemtrails, there they are. I was so dismayed. I'm so ashamed. I thought our country was one of the cleanest, greenest countries in the world. I've always been so proud of being a New Zealander. But this is shameful. This is absolutely shameful.
This is evil.
Shame on them.
This is evil. And, you know, so,
absolutely evil.
Fiona, how long have you lived in New Zealand?
42 years.
And when is the first time you saw them spray chemicals in the sky, these chemtrails or these metallic compounds in the sky? When is the first time they started spraying down in New Zealand for geoengineering?
I believe in the late 1980s. I remember as a child looking at it and asking my mother, what's that? And she told me it was a contrail and explained about the water evaporation from planes. You can tell the difference between a contrail and a chemtrail. And as I started getting older, I started realising, those aren't dissipating, they're staying. And it's really ramped up in the last few years.
So they have been spraying down there. So I'm sorry, they have been spraying in New Zealand since the late 80s, huh?
Mm-hmm. Not as noticeable for in that time, but yeah, it's pretty much just as noticeable as over there now.
Now, Fiona, in regards to the firmament, does it look really close when the sky is really clear? I mean, does it look like it's really close? Because you are a lot closer to it than the rest of us. How does it look like you can almost touch it some nights?
It does. It does, and especially in certain areas. I spent some time in Kaikoura on holiday, and when you go to the beach there and look up at the sky, it really does. It looks like you could throw a ball and hit one of them.
That must be incredible because, you know, I'm in California, and they've put these LED streetlights everywhere, and it looks like there's a 200 million full moons on the ground now. When you look out, if you're up on a hill, you cannot see the firmament is completely gone. You can't see it, but it is very close to where you are. There is no question about it's extremely close, and that's what's so geographically significant about your country. And it makes me wonder, you know, I believe that these people that are doing this to New Zealand are extremely evil. They serve the devil, and they want to kill off all of the people there so they can take that place over. I believe there's some sort of occultic, symbolistic, ritualistic importance of Antarctica, and you are the last stop on the way. And it's ironic they call it Christ's Church, and that's the hub, right? Isn't it? Isn't it just up the way there? You said it was Clark Base.
Pardon?
The air. What's
Sorry, you're
what,
just a little fuzzy there.
what's the name of the Air Force Base? You said Clark Air Force Base.
Oh no, it's Scott Base.
Scott Base. Okay, so tell me some more about your observance with that base. Do you see anything else strange going on at that base? You're in the flight path of that base. Is that correct?
Yes, I have been. I'm not currently, but I have lived along the flight path there.
And so, what kind of aircraft? Do you see small ones? Do you see big ones? Or do you see the same one every day? I mean, what do you see taking off out of there?
The only aircraft that I'm actually aware of leaving, coming to and from Scott Base is the Antarctic plane. Air Force planes do land and take off from there, but that's very, very rare. It's very rare to see a military plane or Air Force plane fly over. Very rare.
Yeah, there's definitely something going on down there. And now, tell us, what do you see about all the? Are they putting in a lot of cell towers? And is the 5G coming to New Zealand as well? These small micro antennas. Have you noticed that's changing as well? They're putting a lot of that stuff in.
After the earthquakes, pretty much the whole of Christchurch has been cameraed. There are cameras everywhere in Christchurch now. All these towers, there's cell phone towers everywhere. They've got little mini ones on the top of light poles and things like that. I myself haven't heard too much about 5G here. I've tried to avoid computers and the internet for most of my life. So I'm not completely savvy on that, to tell you the truth.
So a little bit about
we do have the 4G network.
You're a naturalist who's spent your entire life there, and you are very in touch with the ecosystem, and you've been around that nation, and it's in bad shape right now. There's a lot of misery with these animals. They're all suffering. They're dying, and there's no end in sight, and the water's polluted, and the people they're getting sick, and the government just continues on this reckless path with another, you said 35-year extension on this on the 1080 drops. Is that what you were saying?
Mm-hmm.
This is unbelievable.
Yeah, and I know it is unbelievable. And what the most unbelievable thing about it is it costs $60 million a year to drop this poison all over our beautiful national forests. Costs $60 million. Now we could make that amount with hunting and trapping through the fur trade and the meat trade. We could make that amount instead of spending that amount. We could make that and put that into our economy instead of draining our economy. Well, families who choose that lifestyle, they could be profiting from this and putting their money back into our financial system. It's ridiculous. Why would you spend millions of dollars to poison animals that your nation's people are more than happy to go out and hunt and trap and sell the fur and meat? Why would you do that? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Fiona, they're up to something, and they don't want to solve the problem. They want the problem so they can solve another problem, and that is people like you and all the natives and all the people there. And it certainly seems to me that none of this is making any sense. It makes no sense from a business standpoint. It makes no sense from an environmental standpoint. It makes no sense from a human resources standpoint. It makes no sense from a common sense standpoint, and it makes no sense from a true economic standpoint, because people could be put to work. If the government was really interested in solving this problem, they wouldn't be selling off the country to the highest bidder and poisoning all the natives. Instead, what they're trying to do, I believe, is they're trying to make it so you all die off or move out or end up all in the streets so they can totally control you, and they can get you all out of the way so they can turn that place into the Cameo Shores with the airport up the street to the firmament tours and the occultic rituals that are probably taking place on Antarctica. And I do believe there's some really evil stuff going on just a plane ride away from where you're at. And there's a reason that that plane doesn't have any windows, ladies and gentlemen, because they don't want anybody seeing in, and they don't want anybody in that plane seeing out. And they don't want anybody knowing what the heck is on that thing. That's really scary, folks, because New Zealand is, like Fiona said, one of the closest places to the Garden of Eden on the face of the earth. And you would think they would be doing everything in their power to be protecting their water and protecting the citizens and protecting the wildlife, protecting the soil chemistry, protecting the water quality of the tributaries that feed the lakes and these streams and these rivers. But they're doing just the opposite. They're going around a glass house with a jackhammer to kill a fly, when they could have all of these people that are living in their cars and living in their vans, making a living hunting and trapping, fur trade, meat trade, that would solve the country's economic problems. But instead, they've allowed the housing to get commoditized. They've allowed the foreign money to come in and commoditize the housing and drive the prices up. And in the meantime, the people are being displaced that live there. The same thing that's happening in Southern California, where people can't afford to rent now. And the foreign money's coming in, and the housing just keeps going up. I'm really at a loss for, I don't know how, if they were spraying these pellets all over the place where I live, I would not sit back and watch that helicopter do that. I probably would do something to make sure that helicopter would not be able to continue. But I guess for whatever reason, the people in New Zealand,
a lot of people, and they get arrested for it.
Have people tried to do something to those helicopters and got arrested?
All the time. All the time.
So they're getting locked up.
They try and block the entry points. They try and park their vehicles in areas where the helicopters are going to land. They try and obstruct it as much as they possibly can.
And they're getting arrested.
And then the hired thugs.
And so are they getting arrested for doing this? Are they going to jail?
They're getting arrested and being held for a few hours and then let go.
Okay. Well, I don't know what the solution here is except for exposure. There is absolutely nothing in the American media about this. Nothing. Zero. There is no coverage of what's going on in New Zealand.
Really hard to find anything in the New Zealand media about this. They cover it up. Yes, there's a protest. Yes, they'll have about a 20, 30-second clip. People protesting 1080. And the way they say it and the way they do it is just like, yeah, there we go again. The nutters are protesting 1080. But you know what, New Zealand, we really need this stuff because we have to get rid of those bad possums. There's no other way to get rid of them. And yet people are standing there saying, we want to go and do it. We want to go and get rid of them. This is how we want to live our lives. This is what we were born to do. This is how we've lived for generations.
How much does
And now we can't. It's not safe.
Fiona, how much does one of those possums weigh?
They're just a little bit bigger than a cat, so not terribly much.
And have you eaten possum meat?
Yeah, I've had possum pie.
How does it taste? Does it taste like chicken? Or what is it, rabbit? What does it taste like to you?
It's a red meat. It's a little chewy and a little fatty, but for some reason that makes it good.
Well, I can't tell you honestly that I've eaten possum before, but I can tell you that I probably would be happy to try some if it was out in the bush feeding on berries and worms and grubs and the things that possums eat out in the wild. I'm sure it's a very delicious meat. And they're the easiest darn critters to trap. All you got to do is take a little bit of cat food or something and put it in a box trap, and they literally just walk right in there like a big sucker and just stand there, and it's a done deal. I mean, possums are the easiest animals to trap of any animal in the world. I do not understand why the government will not use a renewable resource, which is a galvanized wire box trap, where all you have to do is load the thing with a little bit of cat food every day, and go out and put the traps out, and they could have that possum problem solved in 6 months, right? I mean, is right?
No problem. Yeah, not a problem. There are so many people out there of government benefits and things like that that would love to be out in the bush hunting and trapping. They would love to spend their days that way. They would love to make a living that way.
So
what
other animals are they trying to kill off out there? The possums, we understand they're invasive, and they'll eat the bird eggs and the whatever. We know that that's a problem. What other animals are being targeted by this sodium fluoroacetate poisoning? What other critters are they after?
Possums, stoats, and rats. Those are the three main ones.
Possums, what, and rats?
Stoats.
Did you say?
I'm not quite sure what the American equivalent would be. Perhaps a weasel, maybe.
Okay, so they're like a varmint that on the ground. Rats are all a whole different.
Yeah, little rodent.
Yeah, the rats are really tough. They're hard to control, and they're really smart. But once again, there's ways to deal with rats. I mean, you could basically release a whole bunch of sterilized male rats and turn them loose and have them mate with the females and not have offspring. I mean, that's one way to deal with the rat problem. But to go around and poison the entire ecosystem, and rats do respond to trapping. You can trap rats. There's many ways you can bait them, and snap traps are very effective. I'm a homeowner. I have a vegetable garden. I have grapevines. I have fruit trees, and I've had my share of invasive pests that I've had to deal with. And I can tell you that the possum is the hands down easiest animal in the world to trap, folks. Get a little bit of 9 Live seafood dinner and put it in a box trap, and that thing will be in there before you wake up in the morning. And they're not smart. They're really as dumb as a box of rocks, and they're very gentle creatures. They're very harmless, and according to Fiona, they're delicious. So there's no reason why they couldn't export this stuff to Japan, sell the fur. I'm sure there's a market for all kinds of bone broth extract from the bones and stuff. They could use that for. I mean, it's just an endless amount of potential economically, and yet they're hell bent on killing off everything and putting the screws to the residents to the point where people have gotten sick and have died from eating animals. Now, what about these wild boar? Now, these are also a problem out there as well. You're saying that this family was hunting boar. Those are invasive as well, are they not?
They're not too much of a problem at all. There's not a huge population of them, and it's quite a popular pastime to go out pig hunting. Quite a few New Zealanders enjoy doing that and do that quite frequently. A lot of families' freezers are stocked up with wild pork because everybody knows somebody that goes out and hunts. The whole 6 degrees of separation, you'd be lucky to get 2 degrees of separation here. Everybody knows of somebody that knows someone here. So the stories that you hear from people coming out of the bush, everybody's got a family member, everybody's got a friend, everyone's got a relative. Everybody has either seen or knows of somebody who has seen these atrocities. They have seen these deer foaming at the mouth and thrashing around and they've seen. There was a lady up north, and she was trying to stop an aerial drop of 1080 in the bush right behind her farm. She knew there were wild sheep out there, wild merino sheep that have been out there for 120 years. And she contacted the local council, she tried government departments, she tried Society for Protection of Animals. She tried everything to try and get this drop stopped. And they went ahead with it anyway. Nobody wanted to listen to her. And her and her family, they were concerned. They thought, oh, those poor little lambs out there. It was just after lambing. And she thought, right, and we got the family together just after the drop to go in and try and help these lambs whose mothers were probably going to be dead. And they got out there, and I've seen the footage, Mr. Imbriano, and it's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. These wild sheep that have been happily living in these ranges for 120 years, just gone through lambing season, and all of them lying on the ground dead lambs beside their mothers. And veins popping out, eyes bulging out, frothing.
And what is
signs of distress everywhere where they've been thrashing about?
So they're torturing these animals. They're totally torturing these animals. And these are sheep grazing. I mean, there's no shortage of land out there, right? I mean, New Zealand is famous for its beef and its pastures. And I mean, what in the world is going on here? Why are they so hell-bent on killing everything?
I don't know. And it's got to a point where I think the only way we're going to stop this is by internationally shaming our government.
So
I don't want to do that. I really don't. I'm highly patriotic. I love this country. I really do. And I don't want anybody else in the world to think badly of New Zealand. It's a wonderful place.
Well, we know. It's
got to a point where New Zealanders have done every single thing that they can do, legally and illegally, to try and stop this from happening. And nothing has worked. It has fallen completely on deaf ears. The government will not do a damn thing about this at all. Whenever we protest about anything else, the government listens. A representative from Parliament will come out to the steps and take the petition from people and talk to the crowd. So if it's 1080, no, they don't. They won't listen at all. The only way we're going to stop this, and I really didn't want to do this because I am a patriot of New Zealand, but in saying that, we have to do something. And I think the only way that this is going to stop is if the world hears about it. And we can't do that through mainstream media because they just block it off. We need people like you. We need truthers from all over the world to expose this. We're sending you our products.
I mean, I purchase your products, and I'm under the assumption that the products are safe to eat. Now, one of my favorite products from New Zealand, I have to admit, are mussels. The green shelled New Zealand mussels. I love bouillabaisse stew. I love seafood, and I love those mussels. Are those things not safe to eat? Have you seen any of the areas where the mussels are being raised?
A lot of mussel farms shut down.
I'm sorry, you broke up. Repeat what you said.
We've had quite a few of our mussel farms shut down. Toxins have been found in the mussels, and so whole farms of mussels have been shut down. I don't know what that's from, but personally, if I was to guess, I would say it's from the rivers and the streams running off into the ocean and contaminating the mussels with 1080, just like they're contaminating everything else with 1080.
Well, when I was a kid, we'd go down to the beach and we'd dig clams. We'd, pull abalone off the rocks at low tide. And, I even, we'd eat the mussels. I mean, seafood and I fish and, I hunt and, so I'm an American, but like a New Zealander, I would enjoy the fare that the land would provide. And your people need to. I don't know. Your people need to pray that God will intervene in this, and at the same time, they've got to do something else besides what they're doing, because it's not working, and it's obvious that there is an agenda here to poison the country and to poison the people, because I mean, sheep. Let's face it, sheep are not. They're not like cheetahs. They don't run away. I mean, you could pop a sheep off with a rifle and a scope. You could take a possum out with a trap. You could take rats out. I mean, you could feed rats cornmeal, and there's ways to get rid of the rats without poisoning everything else. You don't have to use sodium fluoroacetate on everything that you don't want around. I mean, there are plenty of humane ways to harvest animals and to take them to market and to make everybody involved, including the animals. You know, they're dying a horrific death. Their meat's worthless. The carcasses are just poison. Nobody's winning here. You know, I mean, none of this is making any sense. So, you know, your government, as far as I'm concerned, is guilty of crimes against humanity and ecocide. I mean, they're literally killing, you know, needlessly killing, you know, millions of animals, and they're poisoning its population. And honestly, I mean, if I were the president of the United States, I would probably take military action against your government to stop what they're doing, because it doesn't make any sense. I mean, I'm a pretty logical person. I have science degrees. I took plenty of ecology and biology and chemistry and anthropology and physics. And I understand the carrying capacity of, the areas, and I understand the Krebs cycle. I understand how the sodium fluoroacetate works. I understand all this stuff. And what they're doing makes absolutely no sense at all, unless it's part of a kill off.
Completely illogical.
It's pure evil. I mean, you don't go into the ocean and kill off all the fish because you have an invasive species, and you go kill the whole ocean. You selectively remove them. I was in a lake over the summer in Southern California, and it just happened to be Big Bear Lake. And there's a problem with Big Bear Lake because there's this invasive species of carp that's running rampant in there. And the guys that rent the kayaks and the stand-up paddle boards are going out every day with a bow and arrow, and they're getting paid to bring these things in. I think they're getting like $5 a piece to bring in these 20, 30-pound carp on the crossbows. And these young kids, these 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old teenagers are out there on stand-up paddle boards with crossbows, hammering away at these invasive carp, removing the carp from the lake, getting exercise in sunlight, making money, staying out of trouble and staying off drugs. And then they get to take these things, and people get to use these things for fertilizer for their rose gardens or their vegetable gardens. So nothing's going to waste, and everybody's happy. What does New Zealand do? They poison everything and won't listen to anybody. And it's been going for decades, and it's still going.
And they keep hushing it up.
And when the ground shakes and the buildings collapse, the airport gets fixed overnight in the dark when no one's looking, and the planes just keep taking off to Antarctica. And there's certain things that are unstoppable, and that is what we have to expose, folks. There's a couple things going on in New Zealand that need to be exposed. Number one, it's a Masonic-run government and a Masonic-run media in New Zealand. And number two, they're hiding something at Antarctica, and New Zealand is a filtration point to where these people are stopping off and getting their last good shot of scotch before they head to the firmament. And number three is there's genocide being committed against its people and ecocide being committed against its flora and fauna, ladies and gentlemen. And this should be the cause of international outcry and international action. What has the UN done? Has anybody tried to reach the UN or any of these non-governmental organizations that have a say? Like, there are these scientific bodies that that assess carcinogenic exposures of drugs and machines and chemicals. Has anybody responded from the international community to this?
No.
Nothing.
Not that I'm aware of.
See, they've got you guys out of sight and out of mind down there. And we got to put this on the map, folks. We've got to talk about this. Unfortunately, you know, the mainstream media is not going to talk about this. They're going to show you the Dodger game and, Trump's new Monica Lewinsky or something. I mean, whatever the nonsense they're going to throw at you. New Zealand is being depopulated, ladies and gentlemen. The people are being poisoned while they're being priced out of their homes. The land's being sold off to the Chinese, and the elite are moving down there, buying up all this pristine land and water. And is it true that your water is being siphoned off and sold off to China as well? I've heard that too.
That is absolutely true. There are numerous sites all over New Zealand where they pump it straight from the ground, bottle it on the pipe, and ship it straight off to China.
So they're sucking out all the good, clean water from the ground. Okay, you know, folks.
If they own the land where they're drawing it from, they don't have to pay the resource consent tax. They pay a nominal, I think it's something like about $500 a year.
Okay, so.
And they're making millions.
New Zealand is a pristine, beautiful place, whereas the closest thing to the Garden of Eden probably left on the face of this earth, where the birds will actually come up to you and talk to you, and the fish will come up to the side of the creek and look at you, and the birds will follow you. I mean, it's kind of like how it was before the fall, pretty close to it. There's a ton of water under the ground. There's a ton of clean water under the ground. And it's just a gorgeous place. The skies are incredible at night. You're very close to the firmament. You're very close to the edge of the earth. You're very close to the ice wall. And it's being run by a Masonic cabal that is killing off its people and that is selling the country out, ladies and gentlemen. The country is being stolen from its residents, and its wildlife is being murdered by its government. And those are facts. Those are facts, ladies and gentlemen. And I know we've gotten into these facts an hour and 30 minutes into this program. But there's a crisis in New Zealand right now. And people that are living there are powerless to deal with this because they're all alone on this island nation and no one is watching, folks. And you need to tell everybody you know about what is going on there, because guess what? We could all be next. I've been fighting for years to keep them from spraying chemicals in my county, because they've got this mosquito that they've got now that they've released, I believe. I've actually got the guys on record from Vector Control admitting they don't know where the mosquitoes are breeding. So instead of trying to figure out where they're breeding, because they say they can't get at the storm drains under the ground, when a high school STEM class could put together a robot that could disperse the oil emulsion that could coat the waters in these tunnels, instead they're spraying the neighborhoods with chemicals. It's the same mantra, folks. We got to do this. We got to do this. We got to no, folks. You got to say no. We got to fight this stuff. This is evil. They're killing off the food supply down there for those people. There's ample food in the bush down there for those people to go hunting. There's ample water down there for those people to drink, and they've poisoned the water and they've poisoned the food. And now they're stuck in the cities under the LED lights with the cell towers, microwave and hot pockets. And who knows what's next, folks, but I'm not liking what I'm hearing. Fiona, do you have anything else? We've been going for about an hour and a half. That's pretty long. I'm sure you're getting kind of tired.
No, it's okay. It's worth it. It's absolutely worth it.
Is there something I haven't touched on that you want to talk about?
Let's have a look.
How about the insect life? Are we seeing the insects succumb to this stuff too?
You can tell if you walk into a forest area, national park area, or even in the backlands of somebody's farm, you can tell if 1080's been dropped. Every New Zealander knows that if you go in the bush and you can't hear insects or you can't hear birds, get out. Get out, or don't touch anything, don't drink anything, don't eat anything, leave. And this is what's happening. New Zealanders know this, but tourists don't. When tourists go on these tracks where the aerial drops have happened, it's all over the tracks where you're walking. It's all over the streams, through the streams.
You know, that's
when they
disgusting.
Go in there are signs up, warning. There are warning signs up saying that, 1080 poison has been dropped in this area. Now, they tell you that it's deadly to dogs. That's in big capital letters, deadly to dogs. It doesn't say anything about humans, and there is no warnings about drinking the water. Tourists going on tramps for, 3-day hikes, up to 8-day hikes, over these ranges and through the hills, they're not being warned not to drink the water. The 1080's been dropped. You don't walk for 8 days carrying your water supply with you. People drink from the beautiful streams as they go past.
Okay.
It's one of the beauties of going on these walks.
I want to talk to you.
They're not being warned. Tourists aren't being warned.
I want to show the audience something right now, Fiona, because you live in a place where people could literally live off the land if they were forced to. And I want to talk about something that a lot of people may not be aware of in the United States or in any part of the world you're in right now. Because when you go to the store, when you go to the grocery store, you're going to be told you're getting these fresh watercress, right? You see this? You see this, folks? This is a...
no, I'm not. I can't see it. Which watercress is that? The Cora.
This is watercress. These are some leafy grains you can make a sandwich or a salad with. And I want to show you something, folks. There's probably about 150 plants in my hand that are growing. And look at the roots. Okay, I want to show you something. This is grown in hydroponics, ladies and gentlemen. This root structure here is literally the size of my thumb. And this entire plant, you can see how many plants are here. Look at this. Ladies and gentlemen, you are eating chemicals. Okay, look at the root structure here. And, for those of you who think that you're immune to being poisoned, this product was grown in a greenhouse, and it was grown in a medium without soil. And what they use is a form of volcanic rock wool. And it's run under a slurry of running water and chemicals and pH balancers and liquid fertilizer. This plant right here looks totally fine. But look at its root structure. It's spent its whole life, literally. Look how small that is. Can you see my hand? Can you see how small that root structure is? This thing spent its whole life in a river of chemicals under grow lights in a greenhouse. All right. And this is what we're eating at the grocery store. These people down in New Zealand, they've got the bush, they've got the water, they got the land, they got the grass, they got everything down there. And they're getting the screws put to them too, folks. Okay, you and I in the United States, we go to the grocery store and we see these heads of lettuce or these bundles of kale or whatever. Look at this. Look at that. That thing spent its whole life sucking chemicals out of those. Look at all those. Look at them all. You see all these? Look how many plants are here. Like you took a whole pack of seeds and planted them in something the size of a little teeny water cup when you go to the cooler at work. They're doing the same thing to the people in New Zealand, okay? And except in New Zealand, the poison's out in the open. They're dumping it all over the place. In the United States, they're hiding it in these warehouses, and the food's being grown in these chemical, it's like there's these rivers of just flowing chemical water, and these plants got a little teeny thing of root structure in them, sucking out this chemical concoction, and it's being grown under fake lights. It's being grown under artificial lighting. That's not good for you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? You cannot eat food that's not grown out in the sunlight. It's not healthy. Food is petrified light, and if it's a wrong frequency, it's going to hurt you. That's why everybody's getting sick. But in New Zealand, they've got it going on down there. They've got this beautiful place with this beautiful climate, beautiful soil, abundant water, good weather, and guess what, folks? They're going for walks in the national parks, and there's poison pellets all over the frickin' place. and the government won't stop dumping them out of helicopters. And the government has hired a bunch of thugs to protect the helicopter pilots as they dump tens of thousands of kilograms of these green poison pellets all over the frickin' place. And no one's talking about it in the United States media. Why is that, ladies and gentlemen? And who controls the media? Why is it a secret? Why is it that people in New Zealand are being genocided? And this is a genocide, folks. This is a Holocaust. It's a silent one. They're being poisoned. Okay? The poison is being dumped all over the place down there. Fiona, please continue with what you're saying. I'm not going to interrupt you. Go ahead.
This is disrupting a traditional way of life, not only for Maori, but for New Zealanders. It's a pastime of New Zealanders to spend time in the bush. It's a pastime to hunt and trap and fish. A lot of families, right up until nowadays, have chosen to live their lives off the land. It's a very easy thing to do in New Zealand. You can live off the land perfectly fine. You can go away on the weekend and go, hunt a wild boar, go shoot a deer or something like that, and that's you and your immediate family stopped for a year. And this is a regular thing. This is a common thing. Pretty much everybody on any street has probably got some home kill meat somewhere in their freezer from a relative or friend. This is how our nation has lived. And we can't do it anymore. It's not safe. And hunters and trappers and families that go out there, whole families go out there and trap and hunt possums, and the kids pluck the fur and that's their pocket money and things like that. It's a whole entire way of life being ruined. Traditional feasts, traditional Maori feasts, when they get together for a hui, which is a big meeting, or tangies, which is funerals and things like that, the food and the way it's prepared and everything is very much part of the culture. And now a big staple and a very traditional thing, not just for Maori, but for all New Zealanders, is to go eeling. I don't think I've ever met anybody that hasn't gone eeling at some point. It's been taken as a child or something like that. But the eels eat these carcasses of these poor animals that are suffering for days on end, having their insides blown out, and go down to the river to die, and the eels are eating them. And it's customary to go eeling and eat eel, to give people eel, to cook up eel when there's visitors. And these eel are eating poisoned carcasses. To not have the choice, New Zealanders pretty much have a choice. Do you want to live in town or do you want to live in the country? And most people would rather live in the country. A lot of people like to live a very naturalist lifestyle here. It's very easy to do. We have abundance. We have a good climate. We have excellent soil. We have water. We can live off the land, not a problem. And there's a whole cross-section of the community that would love to make a living doing this. They would love to be out there with their families, hunting and trapping and camping out there and, spending a season in the bush and things like that. It's not uncommon at all. It's quite common. And this whole way of life is being poisoned, being ruined. You can't take your kids swimming in the stream, swimming in the river anymore because you look down and there's a 1080 pellet right in the middle of it.
Now, this is also affecting the fish too, right? I mean, it gets into the rivers, it kills.
Another traditional thing for all New Zealanders to do is go white baiting. And some of the the most highly prized whitebait in the country comes from the west coast of the South Island. The beautiful place I was telling you about earlier that is targeted by 1080 drops all the time. West Coast whitebait is a delicacy. It's, people jump at the bit for it. And it's customary, it's traditional. Like I said, same with the hunters and the fishers. Everybody's got somebody in their family or their circle of friends or what have you that goes whitebaiting every season. There's a lot of money to be made from it. It's expensive, and that's a way of life for a lot of people with different seasonal catchments, whitebait one season, deer another season. So, and they live this way, and it's common. And a little whitebait going on the street that's got 1080 pellets sitting in the bottom of it. Once again, destroying a cultural lifestyle. The kura, the freshwater crayfish type thing. I've seen footage of these kura fighting over a wee pellet and dragging it off. That makes me sick. It makes me absolutely sick, because it's now part of the ecosystem, and another animal's going to eat that kura, or a person's going to eat that kura and get sick. Well, the Maori have a lot of respect for this land, and they have looked after it. There's a word, kaitiana, which means guardianship. They knew that they weren't the owners of this land, they were the guardians of this land. And they had very strict rules regarding food and seafood, from moana, seafood. They weren't allowed to drag their nets on the ground. They weren't allowed to drag the baskets along the shore. They had to carry them. If they disturbed a rock, they'd have to put it back up the right way, exactly how it was. These people respected the environment and still do.
Well, Fiona,
they still keep those cultural traditions.
Fiona,
conservation just comes and drops poison.
I want to interrupt you real quick because I want to bring something up. You want to know how poisoned New Zealand is getting, folks. I mean, they've got the second worst cancer rates in the world next to the Netherlands right now. And we know that the Netherlands, if you look at what's happened to the Baltic, and it's funny she mentions the eels. Well, these all these farm-raised fish in Norway, you don't want to be eating that stuff, folks, because they're feeding these farm-raised fish a bunch of eels that are too toxic to sell in the stores now because of all the industrial waste that has gone to the bottom of this landlocked waste dump called the Baltic. New Zealand's got the second worst cancer rates in the world, folks. And this stuff, what's going on in New Zealand is genocide, folks. It's nothing short of a Holocaust. How many people live in New Zealand, Fiona?
Between 4.5 to 4.9 million.
So there's 5 million people in New Zealand whose entire food supply is being poisoned right now. Because the bottom line is, if there were some situation with their currency, a hyperinflation situation, or some sort of a natural disaster that cut them off from importation, they would be self-reliant on a food supply that has been completely poisoned by its own government, ladies and gentlemen. When you employ food control genocide on your people, that makes you a butcher. The Prime Minister of New Zealand belongs in jail for what he's doing to his people. That country does not deserve to have pellets dumped all over the national parks and in the rivers, and having people going into convulsions for coming back having bacon from hunting. That's what's happening. And now the second highest cancer rates in the world are in New Zealand, folks. And this is as of 2016. So, this is a serious problem. And, you think that, what can we do? Let me tell you what we can do. We can tell others and wake people the hell up, because we can't sit back and let people on the other side of the river be butchered And how do we sleep when our beds are burning, folks? Think about it. They're doing it to all of us. If they'll do it to the people in New Zealand by dumping tens of thousands of kilograms of sodium fluoroacetate out of helicopters on pristine virgin lands and waters, then what's to stop them from spraying entire city blocks and neighborhoods with toxic chemicals and biological agents as they put up cell towers and millimeter wave weapon systems everywhere? They're going to do it, folks. Humanity needs to wake the hell up and get off the TV set and get off the Budweiser and get off the bong and realize that we're all being targeted for extinction and extermination. And there are plenty of ways to stop this. It just depends on what the method of attack is being aimed at you, and that will dictate the solution. All right, Fiona, we're at the 2-hour mark now, so I want to cut this off because at 2 hours, I think it's people are not going to watch this. We're going to have to pick this up again. What I'd like to do, Fiona, is have you back on with some more current information as to the status of what's going on down there, and maybe you can get me some footage. Maybe you get me some footage of some of the protests, because I'm seeing nothing. But I will say this, folks, you need to tell people what the heck is going on down there. And the international community needs to get involved. And there needs to be outcry. There needs to be protests. People need to be mad as hell about this. And you people in the United States, you need to contact your congressman, your congresswoman, your state legislators. People need to take action. Our government needs to get involved in this. This is a humanitarian crisis in the making. These people are being poisoned. Their livelihoods are being destroyed. You heard her say it, folks. And Fiona, I'm gonna go ahead and end the call here because I think, let me see. I'm gonna go ahead and say goodbye to you. I don't want to cut you off, so I'm gonna hang up with you, Fiona. I want to thank you for being on, and I'm gonna have you back on next week.
Thank you.
And I'll call you again next weekend, and we're gonna pick this up again. So keep your eyes and ears open, okay?
Okay.
Thank you so
Thank you very
much.
much, Mr. Embriano.
All right.
I just want to say to all your listeners out there, New Zealanders have tried everything. Our nation has tried everything to stop this. Now we need international support. We need to shame our government into stopping this. Please help us.
You heard her, folks. It's time to shame the government over there. And I will tell you that this guy that runs that country needs to go to jail. Okay. And I want to tell you something. If the government tries to spray you or put poison all over your property, you need to do what you can to protect your property. Okay. Because when you're assaulted, you have a right to defend yourself. I cannot believe what I just heard again tonight from another person who spent her entire life out in nature. You know, she said it so well. It is our dream, folks. Everybody I know that makes a ton of money just wants to go live somewhere and live off the land and be left alone. That's the goal of just about everybody I know. That's the human condition, wanting to be free. This is a map of Fullerton, by the way, from not a satellite, folks, but from an airplane. And this is Fullerton, California. This is my city, and I live in a house in this. And I'm not going to stay here forever. But this is where I live, so I can make enough Federal Reserve notes to where I can move out and buy something, so where I don't have to keep working and come up with Federal Reserve notes all the time to keep paying for the taxes and everything. But in New Zealand, you could live off the land easily. And what are they doing? They're poisoning the land, folks. This is a satanic agenda from the pit of hell, run by high-level Masonic components, and it's right at the end. It's right at the edge of the earth, folks. New Zealand is the closest place to the ice ring, and they got a nonstop flight to Antarctica with a plane with no windows, folks. And I want to tell you something. We need to pray in Jesus' name for possibly the children that are on that plane that are getting renditioned to the places in Antarctica where these rituals are going on. Ritual sacrifice, killing off the people in New Zealand, killing off the wildlife, killing off. The devil loves to destroy what God has created. The devil loves to destroy what God has made pure, wholesome, and good. And we need to pray in Jesus' name that God will destroy what seeks to destroy what God has made. And that is my prayer in Jesus' name. Good night, folks.